go. Good evening, everybody, and thank you so much for attending the 7th Montserrat Port Project Town Hall. This evening, I will be your host, and to kick things off, I would like to introduce Mr. Trevor Howell, who's going to lead us in prayer.
Good afternoon. Could we all stand, please? Let us pray. Eternal loving Father, we just want to thank you for the gift of life. I want to thank you, O God, that you've brought us here this afternoon to discuss the affairs of our country. And so, Father God, I ask for your divine blessings upon everything that will happen here this afternoon. Father God, I pray that you will find favor on this project, oh God, that is there to lift us up and to have a great impact on our people. Father God, I pray for its success. I pray, oh God, that you would intervene where you need to intervene so that it can be fruitful. And so, Lord, we just want to thank you for all that's here. We pray, oh God, that whatever we do and whatever we say, we would do it to your honor and to your glory. And may you, oh God, remind us that anything that you have started, any good work that you would have started, that you would see to the end. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Thank you very much, Mr. Howell. So I don't think I introduced myself at the beginning, so my name is Vinaya Bass. Thank you for joining us to discuss this important initiative. We began with the contract signing for this project on the 19th of May, 2022. This was followed by the groundbreaking on June 21st, 2022. We're also grateful for the financial backing from the Caribbean Development Bank, the UK Caribbean Infrastructure Fund, the European Union, and the government of Montserrat. This project is a collaborative effort between the government of Montserrat, the Montserrat Port Authority, and our partners at Stantec, with Meridian Construction Company Limited leading the construction. I'd like to recognize our dedicated port project team, Mr. Wilson Patterson, Mr. Glenroy Foster, Mr. Andre Daly, Miss Mildred Chalmers, Dr. Sharon Burns, and Stantec's Miss Monique Forbes, who is present with us this evening. Also online, we have Mr. Robert Biner and also Mr. Justin Jennings Ray. This port is more than just an infrastructure project. It is a symbol of a brighter future for Montserrat. So I encourage you all to engage, share your thoughts, and ask questions. Together, let's ensure this project serves our community well into the future. The first item on our agenda this evening is a project update by the Port Project Coordinator, Mr. Rolson Patterson. We'll allow you to ask questions at the end of all the presentations this evening. Thank you very much again for coming.
Good evening, everyone. It's always a pleasure for us to come and present updates on our port development project. As our port project team would always emphasize, community progress is our purpose. And indeed, as Ms. Bass would have emphasized, that this project is very important for the development of Montserrat. I want to say welcome to one and all, to our listeners online, to our officials sitting with us here, our many friends, and our community in general. I hope that our presentation today will enlighten you as to where we are with our port development project. Just to give some background and the key objectives, outputs, and outcome of our project, of course, we are constructing a pier that is 130 meters in length, and it's accommodated with a dolphin that would allow ships up to 187 meters to berth at the facility. It will allow for cargo disembarkment, passenger disembarkment as well. And at the same time, we're providing a safe harbor for the existing jetty, which allows for our fisher folks, our ferry, and other smaller vessels to be able to utilize the facility in a safe manner. On this screen, you can see a depiction of what our port would look like. It's a digital rendering of what it would look like, and it's a direct rendering of the design. And you can see the main pier, which is the long piece that is projected outwards, that we refer to the main pier, and is currently being constructed using concrete caisson. At the end of that, about a 40 or 45 meter offset, there is a dolphin that allows ships up to 187 meters to utilize the facility. The opening rendering gives an aerial view of that, and we see that ship, which is about 187 meters, utilizing the facility. And just to the south of that, you can see the dolphin that we have been speaking of, that is sticking out, and that allows the ship to be able to tie it up safely to that mooring. In terms of outcome, we are hoping that this facility would improve our tourism product. It would improve vessel handling and cargo handling, and also turnaround time. For too long, Montserrat's been having difficulties where vessels, including the cargo vessels, the tourist vessels, had to be turned away because of the sea conditions and us not having a facility to board them even during rough seas. This will indeed assist in improving the situation and also improve our own tourism product. Even for recent, we have had some inquiries by new vessels, and I know the Tourism Authority has been discussing with these folks. Even they have been inquiring even about what protection would be offered while construction is ongoing. And I can tell you, even where we are now with the construction, constructing the seaward coastal protection and the causeway, we're seeing quite a bit of protection now on the existing facility. This would enable us to, even if the ship is too large to come to berth against the facility that is being constructed, tenders again can come ashore in a safe manner and disembark passengers. We have had seen situation with the ferry not being able to berth at the existing pier. I've seen situation where the ferry had to turn back to Antigua, having been unsuccessful in its attempt to berth even at the Plymouth facility. And the intent is for what we're building now to improve that situation, that more often than not, that you will see our vessels being able to berth at our facility. And this speaks well for our whole development of Montserrat. Montserrat has a lot to offer, but we need the right facilities to enable this process. The photograph that is being depicted there is a rendering that as you're looking out from our restaurants and the shoreward side, and you have a good view of what you would see. Of course, it will not block our sunset, our beautiful sunset, but it adds to the whole picturesque view that you would have. And I'm hoping that we could have the ferry back in our waters, and how lovely it would be to have the ferry in and a tourist vessel in our port at the same time. Looking at the key activities that are ongoing, and I just want to highlight some of the main focus of what we are doing. If you notice the purple lines, that is the access road and causeway, which is a concrete platform that provides access to the main pier. And then you can see the leeward coastal protection. That area on the inside is referred to the leeward coastal protection. And much of that is under construction and is nearing completion as well. On the outside of that, we have the seaward coastal protection, and we have seen some of that works ongoing as well. Then the red lines, the ones on the south side, the blocks, refer to the caissons, and we are happy to report that the contractor have started laying what are referred to the permanent caissons, those that would provide the main frame for the construction of the pier. Later on, you will see some photograph of that. And they have started outlining the rubber ramp. So in that region, you would have the facility, a rubber ramp. It's formed at a slant and allows for the roll on and roll off of cargo, our containers. And so the lorries can go on, drive onto the ships, collect the containers, drive off, and take back the empty ones. So that is one of the main part of the structure that will be constructed first, or is being constructed first, and then you have the main pier that would follow. Our next photograph highlights the ongoing construction, and you can see there is already a lot of work done in completing the causeway and the road access. And you can see, this is an aerial shot where you can see the permanent caissons that is making the formation for the roller ramp or the roll-on and roll-off facility that is being formed at the moment. And then to the seaward side, there is the construction of the coastal protection. I just want to highlight a bit on the, speak a bit on the caissons. And these are large concrete block. On the table here, there are some 3D models that have been printed, so later on after the meeting, you can have a look. It gives a better idea as to what actually is being constructed. But this is an underwater photograph that highlights the caissons being put in place to form the rural ramp. Caissons are being constructed, they are being precast at the Piper's Pond facility. And to date, the contractor have completed just about 80 caissons. They have reported they have completed the required amount to construct the rubber ramp, but the total requirement is about 324 thereabout, plus what is required for the Dolphin. The Dolphin would take on a different configuration, but will be done with the precast caissons as well. So the photograph highlights, and I know a lot of us been driving along the Piper's Pond in the Carsby Little Bay area, and you can see through the fence the construction that is ongoing. Next, I'm gonna show a video highlighting how the caissons they are removed from their base after being precast. And usually it should take about 3 days for them to remove formwork and then storing the caissons. The caissons are built on what is referred to as a kicker, and it takes the various trapezoidal or triangular shape that allows the caissons to fit together. So in my hand, I have the 3D printed models, and if you notice, there's a trapezoidal shape, and so the form works are prepared so that each caisson can have that. What these allow for, they're called keys that allow the caissons to fit together in a manner that they won't, they would be very stable when they're fitted together. So there you see the crane would have lifted the caisson from off its platform, and it has the ideal shape that is required for construction. The caissons are then transported out to the main construction area onto where the pier is being constructed. This is using a lorry, and some of us may have had the opportunity of seeing these being transported, and I just wanted to highlight this in terms of the whole traffic management process that is in place. Usually, once they're transporting these around from Piper's Pond into Little Bay, traffic is diverted up to the cultural center and down to the port, or from the port up to the cultural center. While the lorries are going through the port gate, there is always someone in place to control the traffic so that these are transported in a safe manner and we don't have any incidents. So far, it's been working pretty well, and we have been highlighting this in our media so that our folks are aware of what is happening. Once the caissons have been transported out to the causeway or the main construction site, the main crane, the bigger size crane, is used to put them in place, and would have seen in the underwater photograph previously where these are being placed underwater. There are numerous other machinery which allows them to be placed accurately, including the surveying instruments. You would see some large towers. So the construction process, because it's underwater, they're using these large towers with the prism at the top that would allow them to place the caissons correctly, ensure that they're level and that they are aligned as they should. There's some other machinery which is called the stone spreader, and this is used to create, it's similar to a road paver, and it is used to place the bedding material which the caissons is being laid on, and compact that material. All of this machinery operates underwater. Previously, we have had questions as to how we are ensuring that the caissons are well stable and well in place. And as part of the designs, the designers have been using what we call the rock anchors, which are some very large steel bars, which are then drilled down into the seabed, just over 5 meters, I think, thereabout. This is about 15 feet or so, which is part of stabilizing the entire structure. Apart from that, the caissons are being filled with materials to ensure that they don't move under the sea conditions, and we know what sort of sea conditions we are dealing with. So in terms of you can see the lines. These represent the rock anchors, and they go from the seafloor right up into the caissons. Each caisson, there's a void that they're constructed. When they're precast, it's constructed with a circular void, which allow us to embed those rock anchors, and it's also filled with a grout material that hardens and make that the rock anchors become one or institute with the caissons. Just to give you an idea of what those steel bars look like, and this is just a sample, it's not the full length. They actually operate with couplings where they're joined together. The machinery is also on island, the drill rig, which allows the placing of these steel rods into the seafloor. So that machinery is on island, is operational, and soon enough, along with those caissons that's already been placed, they'll be putting in the rock anchors. Just to give you an idea about the diameter of these, they're about 3 inches in diameter, and each caisson is designed to accommodate at least 4 of these, 2 on either side, which adds to the whole stability of the structure. I mentioned previously about the drill rig, and you have a photograph there of what it looks like. And it's in operation. I know they have been testing the equipment as well. Earlier I mentioned about the seaward coastal protection. This is what we term as a dynamic revetment design. So you won't see the concrete stabbits as you would have seen in other designs, but this entire structure is about 15 meters in width seawards, and it comes with the required slope, and also it's been built for a height of plus 5 meters above the finished ground level. So it also caters for overtopping as well on the where the main pier meets the land side, which is where the structure is most vulnerable. So they have ensured that the structure is well secured, the roadway would be well protected as well. Coming off a bit of the infrastructure works, and I want to speak to the softer side of the project where we have had much success, speaking to the project safeguards, and from the environmental side of things, we have transplanted the corals. This have been done, we have moved them from within the main construction area, and they have been replanted on the Rendezvous Bluff, as well as the southern bluff, which is referred to as the Carsby Bluff as well. There have been some success and there have been some losses in terms of our corals. A lot of them have suffered due to coral bleaching, which we don't have any control over. We ourselves have been feeling the warm temperatures, and we have seen recently burial coming through as a result of the warm temperatures we've been having in our region. Nonetheless, there's been also some success on this side as well, where we have seen our corals been thriving well. Prior to the commencement of the project, a lot of our species were being affected by the stony coral tissue disease, and we have seen even during transplanting that they have been thriving well and been overcoming this disease. The bat monitoring and monitoring the bat caves and the bats that has their habitat just off the bluff, that is a very important part, and that is always ongoing. We have our local expertise as part of this, along with some of our best regional expertise. We have folks like Scriber, who is working for the contractor in terms of ensuring that we are not hampering our bats in any way. There is also persons who we are in contact with, Dr. Pedersen, who is a specialist throughout this region and have visited Montserrat on many occasions, looking at our bat population. From all reports and from the monitoring, we have a very healthy bat population, and this speaks well even for our agriculture. In the photograph that's been depicted here, they usually do nettings, and a lot of times you would see the guys just below Arrow's man shop with the nets up at just about between 6 and 7, 8 p.m. And so don't think that they are visiting the bar next door, but they are carrying out some netting, very important work. And what from some of the last session, they realized that the female bats were lactating. And also from the song coming from the caves, very, very interesting how how they build their own civilization and society. There's a cave for the male bats and a cave for the female bats. And we've been told that the male bats usually hang out in another nest somewhere in Plymouth as well. So very interesting things to learn. But from all reports, we have not been affecting the bats in the cave with our construction, and we do have a very healthy bat population. As part of the environment safeguards, we do water quality monitoring, and that's been going well. And also in an earlier photograph, you would see the silk curtains as well that are being deployed so that we can control the silk that usually come from the construction material, ensure that it doesn't drift too far, but is situated, it settles within the construction footpath. Social and gender safeguards, very important for us, and there have been many good reports coming out of this aspect. We have Dr. Burns on our team as the community liaison officer, and also our very own Dr. Barnes, who works with the contractor as their social and gender specialist. And they have been doing quite a good job in terms of engaging our folks, ensuring that they are well aware of what is happening. The photograph here depicts a town hall meeting with our elderly, and this was held just a few weeks ago on the 24th. And you know, we see all segments of Montserrat as being very important to this project. They should be aware of what is happening. They should be a part of this entire process. And they did confirm that it was not the first time they have been consulted on the project, but prior to the engagement of the contract, they reported that folks like Mr. Weeks and Mrs. Williams, yes, did engage them in the process. So we have the elderlies. We're ensuring that no one is left behind, including our young ones. If you want to spread your message, you must engage your children as well. And from all reports, one of the better town hall that we had was with the young children. I think this was a grade six from St. Augustine School. The type of questions that they ask speaks a lot about their interest in our whole development. We have also been engaging our Spanish community as well, and there's some intent to engage our French-speaking community, our disabled persons as well, very much part of this process. And not to leave, the students of a college age have been engaged. And there were some also other exciting activities. You would have heard of women and youth in construction, and that was the success. So much so, this was presented to some of the other islands that are taking part with UKSIF projects. I know they would have done a presentation while we did the UKSIF conference back in St. Vincent and the Grenadines in November of 2023. Very, very successful aspect. Apart from the women and youth in construction, I think there was a second one which allowed the ladies to participate in the smaller type construction, carpentry and the like. The first one allowed them to participate in heavy equipment usage. For me, this aspect, which is the skills gap assessment, and I'm happy to report that Government of Montserrat has just contracted a company, A to Z, to assist with carrying out our skills gap assessment. The overall objectives are geared towards capacity building and mentorship for women and young people in project-relevant, traditional and non-traditional skills development areas. Also to provide training for project-affected persons and other parties in business, tourism sectors, in the customer service sectors, innovation, and overall business development to better position our people to benefit from the new capital infrastructure. I think this is a bit late, but it's better late than never. In our planning of our infrastructure project, I think it should be planned with our people in mind, and how we should not be waiting until when the project is completed for us to be thinking, how can our people benefit from our project? So this is there to us as a project team, and we're pushing it forward. The consultant will be required to conduct a skills gap assessment and review the trade and commerce, review areas of culture, tourism, etc. And this would include key stakeholders or groups, such as our small businesses, employees, educational facilities, and then they would come up with training areas or the training needs, identify the training needs that are required. If we're going to have more tourists come to our island, we need to be prepared, not only on the infrastructure side, but our people need to have the appropriate skills. We need to have the appropriate amenities if we are to benefit. A lot of times we write projects and they sound nice, but do we really have our capacity in place? Are we really building the capacity to ensure that we can truly benefit from our project? And so we look forward to this because we see the infrastructure is going ahead, but our people need to be ready. Recently, I know we would have done Prime, which is a pretty good initiative, and I'm hoping that our consultant will be able to partner and consult with some of these folks who've been involved with the Produce in Montserrat Expo. We have on board as part of our team that is engaging the consultant, the cultural department, the tourism department, the trade unit, access, and the port. And we have had some very, very important discussions coming out of these initiatives. And that brings me to the end of my presentation for today. While construction is ongoing, the port is still in operation, and we can see some very calm seas as a result of the works ongoing. So much so we had a large vessel berthing on the seaward side of the existing jetty today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wilson-Pesterson, for a very comprehensive project update. Up next, we're heading over to Barbados, where we have representatives from Stantec who will be giving us another project update as well. For those who are unaware, Stantec is actually the monitoring or supervising engineers of this project. In-house today, we have Miss Monique Forbes, who's a representative of Stantec. She is the engineer's assistant. And online, who will be presenting is Mr. Justin Jennings-Ray. And also we have Mr. Robert Viner, who would also be answering any questions at the end. So, you ready, Philip?
Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Are you hearing me clearly? Because we're getting a heavy feedback here in Barbados. Okay, well, what I'm going to do, if you can hear me, is that I'm going to share...
Go ahead, Justin. We can hear you loud and clear. Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, great. Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to put up our presentation, and you can just let me know when you can see it. Where is it here now? Okay. All right, just bear with me one quick second. I always have difficulty where this is done online. Just bear with me. Okay. Just going to share my screen. Can everyone see the presentation?
Yes, we can. You can go ahead now.
Okay, all right, thank you. Well, good evening, everyone, ladies and gentlemen, and other distinguished guests and members of the government of Montserrat. As mentioned, my name is Justin Jennings Ray. I'm a senior civil engineer from the Barbados office of Stantec, and my colleague Robert Bainu is also a senior civil engineer, and my colleague Monique, who is on the ground there, were already introduced. I'll be making the presentation of Stantec's contribution to the town hall meeting today. Just to let you know that I do believe Mr. Patterson made a very clear and comprehensive presentation capturing much of what we had actually planned to present. But I'll go through nonetheless swiftly going over points that he's covered before, okay? All right, so the agenda that we had was to really give a bit of a background on the purpose of the project, which Mr. Patterson has already given, to briefly describe the project development team. I think this is important, definitely for the public to understand. Stantec's role on the project, who are we and what are we doing? The requirements of the project, a lot of which Mr. Patterson has touched on. We'll just touch on the bits, which we can provide a bit more clarity on if needs be. We talk about the schedule of the project and some of the constraints. So these are, occurrences that have resulted in what is deemed to be the protracted construction period for the project. We talk about progress a bit with some numbers, share a couple of photos of progress. We'll very quickly go over the environmental and social compliance because Mr. Patterson did such a great job there. So we do know, as Mr. Patterson mentioned, that the port development is definitely essential for the development of Little Bay as a major commercial hub, replacing the old capital city of Plymouth, which was destroyed by the eruptions of the Sophia Hills volcano. The new port infrastructure is definitely important, as was mentioned, for the development of the tourism industry and the improvement and growth of commercial trade on the island. Here you have the volcano and a little map here of Montserrat, where we have Little Bay here, Plymouth here, and of course the volcano in the center. So the project development team, the owner is the government of Montserrat. The design builder is Meridian Construction Company, with the contractor's design engineer being WSP out of Houston. As was mentioned, there are various stakeholders at the development end, including the Caribbean Development Bank and some of its sister agencies who are helping to provide funding. There's the Montserrat Port Authority who will provide, who will manage the facility, and then there's Meridian and Stantec. And this is important because this is a design and build project, which basically means that Stantec provided the concept designs to the point to enable bidding and to provide information to the contractor so that his design engineer could do the detailed design of the port. And part of our job as Stantec, which I'll go into very quickly further down, is the monitoring of that process. In terms of Stantec's role, we are the technical representative of the government of Montserrat. As mentioned, we provided a preliminary design of the port layout facility, taking into consideration specific requirements that were set by the Port of Montserrat. We provided oversight of the design and the review of the designs that were produced by the contractor. So that was a process that was that occurred. Stantec also did many of the preliminary studies, including site investigation, geotechnical, some environmental, and social and gender studies, and so forth, right? Which helped to provide the information, especially on the environmental side, provided some of the information that is being used for the management plans that were described by Mr. Patterson, such as, monitoring the water quality, the bats, birds, turtles, coral relocation, and so forth, right? Stantec also produced the bidding documents which the client used to reach out to contractors for bids, and also help the client in the evaluation of the bids that led to the award of the contractor Meridian. During the construction phase, it's an important phase, that's where we are right now. The focus here is ensuring or making sure that the completion of the project is done in accordance with the final approved designs and specifications as provided by the contractor's engineer. If there are design changes, then part of the process is for Stantec to review and approve and so forth, right? So in addition to that, we are monitoring the construction. So we're keeping an eye on quality and the specifications, making sure that they're compliant. We're assisting with the management of the claims for payment and processing of payment to the contractor on a monthly basis, amongst other contractual tasks. There are all kinds of issues that come up from time to time contractually, and we assist the project and the government in managing those or interpreting those issues. So the Stantec team is quite massive. We've got several key experts, subject matter experts, who are basically working remotely, more so out of our ports team out of Vancouver. They're marine engineers and coastal engineers and structural engineers, geotechnical engineers, electrical engineers for the lighting and so forth, environmental engineers and the social and gender specialists who are providing oversight of what the contractor's implementation of the environmental and social and gender safeguards. And then there are resident engineers, and there's a resident engineer and engineer's assistants who are on the ground keeping an eye on things. Environmentally, as was mentioned before, there are key issues, coral relocation, which was discussed before, keeping an eye on the birds, the bats, and other mammals. There's biosecurity, which has to do with putting in safeguards to prevent pests coming in on materials, particularly aggregates and sands, which are brought into the island for the project. And then, as mentioned, there's on the social and gender side, there are town hall meetings and there's community engagement. So we're providing oversight of the contractors' implementation of those two plans, environmental and social and gender management plans. We'll not go into any detail here on the design. I think Mr. Patterson did a great job of that. But just to say that the design criteria for the pier focused on 187 meter total length cruise ship, which is a windsurf, which is shown here, and 120 meter total length container ship. Right. There's a roll-on, roll-off ramp, which was described in terms of what it does, in terms of assisting with the offloading and loading of vehicle and wheeled cargo. There was slope stabilization work that was done. So, and maybe I should just explain, this is a plan looking down. So where you have the new access road, which is coming in, which is shown in green, to the, I believe it's the north of that, it was a cliff face that needed to be stabilized. So that was part of the works also, right? The cyan color there shows the Ro-Ro ramp area, and the pier is shown in pink, right? There's a mooring dolphin that was mentioned, which is shown here, and this is really to enable the mooring of the bow of the longer ships. And then there, of course, there are fenders along the piers, so that when the ships come and brace or moor against the pier, they don't directly impact. The 3D render you've seen before. This is just a different perspective. Here you can see the windsurf and you can see a container ship. Here's a Ro-Ro. Here is the new causeway that is being built. The slope stability is here. And if you really look, there's some lighting here, some street lighting that will ultimately be installed. The pier design was described already by Mr. Patterson. The only addition I would say is that it's a base unit. It's a stacked modular reinforced concrete caisson system where additional weight is added by infilling the cavities with fill, and then of course there are the rock anchors which Mr. Patterson mentioned. So there's a base unit and 3 tiers, 1, 2, 3, that elevate the structure out of the water, and then the top deck is just a reinforced concrete slab as you'd have in your private home, of course built to a different level of structural integrity. Just a couple of photos here. I will not go into this. The video showing how the units are transported was quite good. The picture here is really just meant to show that these units are under construction. What is typically done is that you use steel and you use formwork to form the box, so to speak, and you pour the concrete inside, right? In terms of schedule, the original commencement date was June 9th, as mentioned. The original completion date was January the 4th, 2024, but this has been delayed. The current slated projection is coming from the contractor is the 25th of February, 2025. There are several reasons for this, some of them having to do with delays with designs and looking at various options and so forth. There are lots of materials and components and equipment that had to be procured, and that was delayed. There was a delay in the commissioning of the concrete plant, and there were some unforeseen circumstances, physical conditions, that is, in the nearshore that resulted in the need for some design changes. So those reasons and others are why the project is delayed, but it is ongoing and progressing fairly well. So this is an aerial photo that you saw before. There have been temporary, in terms of progress to date, there have been temporary caissons which have been placed just at the near shore here. And these are really to facilitate the crane being able to get out into the marine environment, to lay these other caissons, which are to be laid. As mentioned, they're in the region of 80 out of 321 that have been cast to date. There are 3 permanent ones in the water, but there are an additional 6. And when I say these here are above sea level. The permanent ones, which I'm describing, and the temporary ones that I'm talking about, are within the sea, below sea level. And 3 of those are permanent. The others are there to kind of protect the works. So you don't want to. One doesn't want to put these works down and then have a storm surge pass through and destabilize. So until until the caissons can be placed and filled and the anchors put in, there's some temporary works that are done to protect the works that are being constructed. The coastal protection, which Mr. Patterson mentioned, is ongoing. It's around 50%, and these are the protection on the seaward side and in the leeward, or in the basin area here. Quite a bit of dredging has been done, and the concrete roadway, or the panels, or the concrete roadway of the causeway leading to the pier structure has been poured to some extent. 6 is being poured in alternating panels, and 6 of them have been poured. We have a couple of pictures to show. But overall, the progress is slated in the region of around 58% complete, with around 33% of the civil works having been completed, 65% of the dredging having been done. And by dredging, what that is the removal of existing aggregate, existing rock within the pathways where the ships will come towards the new pier. So here, just a couple of pictures. We have, a picture here showing the construction of the causeway. These are reinforced concrete slabs, and you see they're being poured in alternate bays. And here you see, here you see the contractor getting ready to pour another set. Here again, we have the caissons. If you look closely here, you can actually see one which is underwater. Okay, the silk curtain, which is meant to protect the far reaches of the sea in terms of debris and silt that might be agitated as the contractor works. You can see is in place, and just a picture here showing how a base unit is being laid in the sea. The seaward protection, this is what it looks like up close. Basically a boulder pack, which is set there, which is meant to absorb the energy of the waves and to protect the coastline. I would not go into detail here because Mr. Patterson touched on this area already, but only to say that there is also turtle monitoring, and so there's daily surveillance. And in June, there were actually 2 turtles observed, where the water quality monitoring was being done. I spoke a little bit before about the biosecurity, which involves the use of bait and disinfectants to make sure that there are no pests in the aggregate and sands and so forth, which are being imported into the country. Mr. Patterson spoke about the bat monitoring and the use of dusk netting in order to capture and examine and release the bats and so forth. There's also bird monitoring. There are daily inspections and sweeps, and based on reports, there's been no nesting or injured birds observed. For marine water quality, there's a multi-parameter meter piece of equipment that is being used to routinely test test the quality of the water to ensure that it meets the ambient standards. And as you can see in this picture, you can see the silk curtain. And what happens there is that it has to be lifted from time to time if there's rough seas. There's the social and gender meetings that are being held fortnightly, and they do include representatives of the contractor and the government and Stantec. And as mentioned by Mr. Patterson, there are other stakeholders meetings that are being held in the community, some facilitated by the government's community liaison officer. So in terms of the immediate next steps, haste is being put on casting of the balance of the caisson units. That work involves rebar tying, concrete pouring and curing. When you pour the concrete, you do have to wait quite a bit of time for it to gain strength and so forth before you can move them. Work continues on the causeway. Here's another shot of the causeway there, just before a pour being inspected by one of our staff members. And of course, continuing on with the monitoring of the environmental and social controls. Right, so that brings me to the end of the Stantec presentation. Just an interesting figure that you can see to the left here. This is the bat cave that Mr. Patterson was talking about. Okay, so as a company, Stantec, we are extremely pleased and committed to work with the government of Montserrat and the people of Montserrat to ensure that this project is delivered, to the highest quality, so that you have, a pier that will, survive the test of time and elements. Thank you. Oh boy, don't tell me. Oh Lordy. Oh Lord.
Those people who are familiar with these meetings know that I always open the button. I have no problem with that whatsoever. But I want to ask a quick question and sit down for now. Where is Meridian?
Very simple response. As you can see, Meridian chose not to attend our session today. Well, they're not here, so I don't know why they're not here.
My question is very simple. I'm Ruben T. Mead. About a few weeks ago, there was a question in terms of payment to the workers at Meridian's workers. What were the causes for that late payment or non-payment, and have those issues been resolved?
Right, so your questions with regard to payment to Meridian workers and late payment. So Meridian would have to answer why they haven't paid their workers on time. But just to add though, that government of Montserrat for the last 7 months have been paying Meridian on time within the remits of the contract, which asks for 56 days from the submission of the payment request. Obviously, that payment has to go through various iterations. At times we look at payment, we may think that the quantity being requested is not merit to the amount of work that has been completed. There are other issues that has to be looked at. So that is done between our project team and the engineers. Having done so, and we try to do that within a matter of days, once the contractor is responding as well. Having done so, the payment then goes on to the Ministry of Finance, who is signatory to the contract, the FS, who then submits this to the Caribbean Development Bank. They do their own iterations and processing before the payment is finally transferred to Meridian's account. So like I said, stating the facts, for the last 7 months, we have not been late with payments.
Okay. One other question and then I'll sit. You require at least 320 caissons. You're at 80 now. Thereabouts?
Thereabout.
Are we on schedule for getting the other 200 plus on time to have a completion for February 25th of 2025?
Well, so you would have noted that the engineer the contractor have stated that date, so they must know that they're in a position. What I would say is that it requires them to be producing at least 14 caissons a week, and they have not been able to optimize their production to date to that 14.
Sorry, optimizing meaning that they have not been able
maximum they have been able to produce at least 8 or 10 a week. 8, they're about a week on their best day.
Okay, so the net effect is that February 25th of 25 is very unlikely. Based on the fact that you're saying optimum production should be.
You can, ensure that you meet your schedule.
Sorry, I'm a little skeptical here.
Right. So
let's not play with words.
Just to answer to the response. So Meridian themselves mentioned a date in February. So they must know where their production is currently and what it entails for them too.
No, because if government of Montserrat is part of the process and Stantec is part of the process, somebody has to be signing off as to the quantum of work which has been completed.
Right.
And if the schedule is saying 14 per day, and they can only achieve 10 per day on their best day, then February 25th, 25 is an unreasonable date to expect them to finish. With the understanding that we're in the hurricane season, and therefore you're likely, based on how things are going, there's a strong possibility that we'll have rough seas which will stop you from working on certain days.
Thank you.
My follow-up question is, are we on budget?
Yes, we are on budget.
Vaughan Barsley. I've got a series of questions, actually, but Ruben's touched on some of them. You're 13 months late. Obviously, from all accounts, you will not be reaching your time. With the delay, you've got a 13-month delay. How is it been funded? How's the delay been funded?
The contractors being paid based on works produced.
No, but that's not the funding of it. The contract is...
How it's been funded?
The contract is $100 for argument's sake. A delay costs money. So how is that delay, who's paying for that delay, and how is it being funded? So it will actually cost more than $100. So how are you funding the delay?
So the contract speaks to consequences for delay, and as you would expect, those elements would put in play once the time is there for doing.
Yeah, I expect that, but I don't know how it's been. That's why I'm asking the question.
So that hasn't come into play at the moment, like like I said to you.
So
The contract is paid based on the work produced.
yeah, but if the work isn't produced, they're still here costing money. So you have to pay them for the time they haven't produced anything.
We don't have to pay them for their time. If they're at fault, we don't have to pay them for what they're at fault. They would have to know how they face that
because
budget.
of the weather, or they're not at fault. Who pays for that?
So the contract speaks how you deal with issues like
So
that.
it's all within the contingency, hopefully. Okay. Okay. It's recognized that sea levels will rise about a meter or so in the next 50 years. Has this design taken that into account?
Okay, so I'd allow Stantec, who is part of our engineering team, Justin or Robert, if you heard that question, has sea level rise been taken into consideration?
Yes, the answer is yes. The part of the studies that were done during the design stage included a comprehensive climate change study which looked at sea level rise and so forth. So that was, and especially when you're working with the funding agencies, they're very concerned about that. So that was always a part of the terms of reference of the design. It was done and it was integrated into the design. I wouldn't be able to tell you exactly at this point how much higher the structure is due to the results of the study, but it was considered and integrated into the design.
So do you know what size of swell it would be able to, if the swell, say 2 meters, 3 meters, if you get a storm surge, how is that going to cope? Or will you have to close it or something? Do you know the size of swell that it can withstand?
I myself don't know the size of surge. I mean, ideally, and we were hoping to have our coastal engineer expert on the meeting. He couldn't make it. But what I do know is that there are limitations.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
obviously,
based on a set design storm return period. And during, if that limitation is exceeded, then you could have a situation where you can't use the facility until, of course, the storm or the surge has passed.
Well, can you make that information public some way, so we know what size surge it requires? It can withstand.
Yes. Just to interject.
Yes.
Just to interject, Justin. Yes, climate change and the rise in sea level has been taken into consideration. So much so, the current pier is being built at least 1 meter higher than the existing pier that is there. And of course, you have to take into consideration the heights for offloading of passengers and how these vessels are designed. In terms of height wave design, and for a return period of 75 years, I think it's 7 meters, 6.7 meters, yes. It's been designed for that.
For the size of swell.
For that size of swell. And that takes in the infrastructure, how the infrastructure is designed, including the rock anchors, the size of the caissons. So all that has been taken into consideration for a wave height of 6.7.
That brings me to another question which just comes to mind. What is the design life of the port?
So it's, as he mentioned,
no, I didn't see it.
A return period for 75 years.
75 years?
Yes.
Okay.
So that doesn't mean that the port is only going to last 75 years.
No, that's the design.
But what it means is that...
I understand that. Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
What it means that you take consideration into wave conditions within the last 75 years as to the max. You have things like we had storms like that destroyed Dominica and the other islands and so on. So you take those conditions over the worst conditions you have over the last 75 years, and you design for that, and there's a safety factor that is added on to that.
Okay. You mentioned in your earlier presentation that you've got steel rock anchors. Seawater is notoriously corrosive. How have you protected these from corrosion?
Okay, Justin, or Robert, if you wanna respond to that.
Yeah, I don't think we have an answer to that question. It'd be good if Meridian was here also.
Okay.
But what we can do is get the specifications on that. Because I agree, it could be cathodic protection or anodic protection that is meant to safeguard the steel.
Yeah.
So we'll find the correct information and we'll make it available to the public.
Okay, I'll ask one more question before I put you out of misery. Maintenance of the port. How often will it be maintained? And what's the cost of maintenance? Because that must have been planned in. I'm trying to find out if Montserrat would be able to maintain the port over a long period of time. How would the maintenance continue?
And that is a very fair question. I must say we are currently looking at a maintenance plan based on what the port has experienced over the last 10, 20 years. We have seen siltation of about 3 meters over the last 20 years or so. And so we take that as a period. What has been mentioned, what has been looked at so far, our dredging of the harbor may be required every 10 years, 10 to 15 years.
And did they put an estimated cost to that? So we get you could plan that within your budget?
No, we haven't put a cost to that as yet, but when we did dredge Plymouth Port, that contract was in the region of $500,000 to $700,000 EC dollars. The dredging on this facility, which is far different because you have to dredge not just for siltation, but dredge for construction, which is within the $1 million to $3 million plus.
Okay, all right. Finally, Justin said he observed turtles in the area. Did the turtles come to land or were they scared off?
No, they didn't come to land.
Okay.
They didn't come to land. As a matter of fact, there's a delimitation zone that is identified within the construction zone where you don't want the turtles to come in that area. But if they do, then you would have to take the appropriate actions to ensure that you don't harm the turtles. Inspection are done on the beach as well, to see where they're nesting, ensuring that they're not nesting within the construction area, and if they do, the necessary actions that should be taken in that light.
Good afternoon, Mr. Patterson, and
good afternoon,
everyone
sir.
listening online. I just have a quick question. Is there a contract between Meridian and CDB, or is it between the government of Montserrat and CDB? Could you just give a little
So the contract is between the government of Montserrat and Meridian.
Thank you. Mr. Patterson, I was at the first 3 meetings or so. I've missed a few, but, and I'm concerned that I'm not hearing much new to it, except that now we've moved to February 25th, 2025 for completion. That seems to me a bit of a problem, but there's nothing I can do about that. What I want to find out first of all is, I want to come see the site. I love ports, as you can imagine, and I love construction sites. How do I get permission to come get a tour? I mean, while people are working.
While they're working,
yeah.
Maybe a difficulty in your conditions.
Yeah. I don't mean tomorrow. We have until next year. Thank you for the concern.
But we have done as much as we can to take persons who are interested to see the site. A few months ago, we took the swimmers to the site. There are 2 groups of swimmers that we usually engage as part of our community engagement. These are the midday swimmers and the early morning swimmers. So at times, Dr. Burns and myself, we would get up pretty early in the morning and meet with them, explain what is going on. And they had expressed an interest in going to see what is happening, and we took them as close as we can on the pier.
Yeah. I promise you, I'm good on construction sites. I'm used to them. So when I'm able to walk properly in a month or so, I'd like to come. Please?
All right.
All right. Is it still the case that there will be no flow through whatsoever under any portion of this pier?
Still the case.
So that tiny little area inside, how are we going to keep it clean? Because I came in on the ferry a couple of months ago, and when I think of Little Bay, it seems small, that little space between the two piers. And when I was coming on the ferry, I realized it was even smaller than I thought. How are we going to keep it clean?
So as you can see from the first photograph, the first rendering that was depicted, you can see it's not as closing as you may have imagined.
Yeah, I remember that they moved it a little bit, but it's you see that space in there, right up against the cliff?
Yes.
It's like this big, and it has 140 how much? 140 meters.
130.
130. That's 390 feet of pier.
Right. But we don't have a 390 feet that is closed in. It's less than that, as you can see. So we're expecting that the facility would flush itself under the various wave conditions that we experience over the years. Like now, it's pretty calm. Later on, you're gonna see the North Seas coming in. Of course, we don't expect it to be as agitated, but and the predominant direction of the waves are northeast, which means it goes in that direction. So we don't expect to see murky, dirty, stinky water or even dead dogs.
I'm holding you to that. I'm asking that question partly because see that little gut that comes down by port? It is always filthy. And it's frightening to think that the water's up in there. Because if you think of Antigua Harbor, for example, Antigua Harbor is a massive, massive harbor, and it's dirty now.
Antigua configuration is a lot different. Okay. It's a big natural harbor. And you're quite right, we do have silt coming down from those rivers. Matter of fact, from all of the guts that we have. What is important, I think the important message we need to spread is that we as a people need not to be disposing garbage within our waterways.
You know how I feel about that. Couple of questions more and then I'll be done. You talked about pests and killing, well, I think it was Mr. Jennings Ray who talked about them. Which pests does bleach kill? Because it doesn't kill pests.
I can't recall he mentioned bleach.
Yeah, he said. No, he said about the soil. They use something and
disinfectant is what it is.
Disinfectant. Okay, disinfectant. What pest does disinfectant kill?
So we as part of the biosecurity measure, there are two sets of substance that's being used. Disinfectant, and it's used internationally for shipping. Even when you go on an aircraft, they spray a very light disinfectant. So that is part of the process. The second one is a very potent product. It is spread in pellets, and it's geared towards dealing with slugs, like the African giant snail and that sort of stuff, which deals with that very efficiently.
Okay, my last question, the really big one. For a couple of years, a group of us have been communicating with CDB about environmental concerns, gender concerns, funding concerns, and got pretty much nothing back. We spoke to everybody. We wrote to everybody, FCDO, Government of Montserrat, Stantec, Meridian. Everybody got copies of these letters on more than, how many did you send, Julie? 3 or 4? And got nothing back except a couple of times, thank you very much for your concern, which causes concern because, especially now we're hearing about these difficulties Meridian is having and whether it's CDB who pays, who doesn't pay. And you will understand that we are very concerned that it seems that nothing really has improved since the first meetings that we've been having. Am I mistaken? Am I overthinking this? Am I...
You asked me with regard to a response to your,
yes.
to your correspondence?
Yes.
Well, Ms. Osborne didn't write to the project coordinator. You wrote to CDB. But of course, I think the questions that you were seeking a response on were directed to the relevant persons. So I don't have a response as to why they didn't provide you with a response on those questions.
Okay, and so one of the things that we had asked about in there was about fishers. I'm happy to see Mr. Mead here because I know in one of his earlier, one of the Little Bay development projects, there was space specifically set up for fishers because we eat fish, we love fish, and in any case we have to ensure that the people, our people, are able to conduct their business without any troubles, and we still have nothing here for fishers, etc., etc. How are we going to fix that?
Right. So as you can see, this was not designed with facilities for fish, partly because the fisher folks themselves expressed the require to have a facility outside of the port setting.
Afterwards, after they realized there was nothing in here. So they're going to get it?
So let me finish the statement. Okay. So the requirement is to have a facility, and I think, you know, from our engagement with them, it's clear that a facility that is separated and apart from this port facility because of the security issues. I've seen fisher folks myself. There's a container vessel in or some other vessel, and these guys get their finish their daily fishing around midday. And they have to sit on their small fishing vessels in the harbor until when the containers finish offloading before they can offload their catch of the day. And it's telling. I do agree and do support that there is a need for a facility for our fisher folks. I have been engaging different quarters on this aspect. There is no funding within the current port project to facilitate such, but it does not mean that the fisher folks cannot get a facility.
Okay, so basically nothing has changed. Okay, Mr. Patterson, this is actually my very last question, because you and I had talked before about this, and the last time I wrote to Martin Parlett, I got no answer about that document that says the difference that this new addition will make to the economy of Montserrat. So the port,
it's the business case.
The business case. I'm asking, and I'm asking specifically if this port, as it is right now, brings the government $50 million a year in revenue from whatever. This thing here, sorry, I'm not being disrespectful. This pier here will increase that by how much? Why is this worthwhile? How is this worthwhile? Is my last question. And can we please have that document?
So I promise you I would have you that document. I think it's a public document. At the moment, finally, yes. All right.
Just follow-up question, because the group of us who are not only concerned about fishers, know that we've understood that there's no place for fishers and they'll have to find alternative funding for fishers. What is the update on anything for real estate for yachts? That was one of our concerns.
Okay, so
we know fishermen are out. How about yachts?
Right. So I don't have a response to that because, again, yachting is not part of this facility as well. But I know the administration is looking at a master plan as to how we can further develop our facilities, including the land side as well, I suppose. Yachting facility would be taken into consideration. I've been around long enough to know there has been various iteration and proposal, including the famous Piper's Pond berthing facilities for yachts, and but these need further discussions beyond the sport project.
So I'm assuming that this is all going to go back to the government at some point. And this is a question, perhaps not for you, Mr. Patterson, but if you can answer it, it will be good. For the government then. I was in a meeting with the Premier of Montserrat some months ago, a year ago perhaps, and he acknowledged in the meeting that tourism, cruise ship tourism is not nearly as, lucrative as yachts, as small yachts that come in. We had that conversation. A lot of the conversation today has been about the impact of this pier to tourism. So I'm still concerned now, even more concerned, that we're still at the point where no accommodation is being made for those people who come in on these yachts. I know them, Mr. Patterson. I just do it. You go into one place, you pick up a yacht in Antigua, you bear back a yacht in Antigua, you spend easily, between 6 or 8 of you, $3,000 buying beer and cheese, and the only thing that leave you on the boat is the mop and the bucket and the broom. You have to buy dishwashing fluid, everything in that place. And every time you go to a different island, you have to stock up on water, you buy more beer, you go on shore, you buy food, you lime for a day or two. You spend a lot of money, more than these people spend. And yet here we are spending $90-something million on this pier, not port, this pier, that I can't see the benefit. I really cannot see the tourism benefit. We're making the tourism issue. And I can't see the other commercial benefit either, because I don't see anything being created in Montserrat right now that's going to be manufactured through the port. Also, however, do we want Montserrat to be a manufacturing place, or do we want to focus on service and make it a service economy? So maybe you can't answer this, Mr. Patterson, except why have we not, the part about why have we still not made accommodations for yachties?
All right, so I'm not the person who will be able to answer that question, but obviously we need to look at our economic growth strategy and how we can incorporate these sort of elements. Montserrat is a place where we have to look at what niche market we can take advantage of in our whole development.
Good afternoon again. My question is, well, I just wanted to establish one thing for those people who are now joining in late.
Right.
We have been told, we saw it on a slide earlier, and we've been told that the breakwater for the existing port will not be completed until February 25th, 2025. That is what it is. You keep up. Keep up. That pier is the breakwater for the existing pier. All right, and it will not be completed until the 25th of February, 2025.
So that's your leading statement, so
yes,
you get to the
yes,
question.
I wanted people just to remember that. Yeah. Now, you answered a question earlier from the gentleman with regard to the design capabilities of the port, but I don't think you actually specified what is the expected lifespan of the port. That is not the 75 years that you spoke about.
No, the 75 years is not the expected.
Right, so that's what I want to know. What is the expected lifespan of the facility?
I don't have that response, answer to that. 50 years, Glenroy said.
Okay, so it's expected to last for 50 years.
50 years.
And there was early on in the town hall meetings and the early discussions, there was some conversation about a phase 2 of the port project, which would create an actual breakwater for the pier, right?
You're opening a can of worms, sir.
No. Like I said, it was a conversation early on.
Yes.
Has that door now been completely shut? Are we to understand that there is nowhere in any plan right now for a breakwater for the new port that is being built?
Right. So there are a number of things that we have to consider. But to answer your question directly, the port criteria, the design criteria stipulates that it must be designed and constructed in a way to allow for future expansion of what we term the coastal protection, which is the similar configuration for the breakwater alongside the 130-meter pier. It also speaks to having a berm of 5 meters above finished level. And this also caters for overtoppling, which a question may come up later on. However, you would realize if we are to construct this berm, this dynamic revetment, this stone structure to further support the pier breakwater combo here, that will lose berthing facility on the seaward side. So we would have to consider what are we giving up and what we are getting. So the plans are there, but it's for us to act on them and make very pertinent decision as to what we want to do for the future.
So you remember my comment from then is when fowl get teeth.
That's right.
Right. All right. From my observation, my layman's observation, and from your depictions with the ships that you've overlaid on the diagrams you've showed us, we will not be expecting any larger ships to come to Montserrat than what currently come. Because every picture we see is of a ship that has already been here, anchored, and then the passengers come off on the what do you call them?
So to answer your question, I know there is some interest for a ship that is larger than 187 meters, actually a ship of 210 meters.
Yeah, but we have to be realistic because the turning radius would be a problem. How are they going to turn to back in?
So I'm responding.
Yeah.
I'm responding to your question.
Right. Yes.
So I can only speak to what the pier is designed to accommodate. Right. Maybe it would be up to the ship operators as to the risk that they are taking on. I don't think the turning radius may necessarily be an issue because the ships turn on the outside before mooring onto the pier.
All right. We're not going to argue about that.
And then last town hall meeting, you heard that our ships these days are modern. They have built with all sort of capability, thrusters that are computerized and stability and all of that.
The gentleman earlier asked also about the maintenance costs for the port. I am interested in the operational costs of the port. We build all sorts of projects in Montserrat, and we leave out the operations element of the ongoing cost, right? We've obviously done that on the port so far. I haven't heard about it up to now. Maybe you'll enlighten me now. What is the operational cost, and has it been factored in? Because you're doing a project of this size, you should at least factor in the first 10 years of operational costs, because you're giving the Port Authority something that is 4 times bigger than what they have now. It might be as much as 3 times more or more to actually operate it. Has that been factored in?
So this would be a question for the port manager, but what I can...
No, this is what I'm saying.
Right.
We need to establish that in projects, when you're doing large projects, a part of it needs to be the initial operational costs.
Right. So as part of the business case, which Ms. Osborne mentioned earlier, you would see the projection based on various iterations, operational costs, the input costs, etc. All this has to be taken into consideration in developing your business case, which at the end would tell you whether your project is viable or not viable. So I suppose from that information, yes, that has been taken into consideration. As to the details, I would prefer for the port operators to
Right. Well,
to have that discussion.
I want us to pay very, very close attention to those details, because I see the problem arising with the hospital project as well. I go to those meetings as well. There is no operations cost built into the project, right? I know of projects that are happening and have happened elsewhere in the other overseas territories where it is front-loaded with 10 years' worth of operational project funding, right? We need to understand that and understand that other people know how this is done and start to insist on that as well. There's no point giving me a hospital that is 5 times the size of what I currently have, and then I have to now come to be scrunting and begging for additional funds to run it. You know right from the beginning that it's going to cost more money. So that should be factored in.
I take your point on both. So, and I think you would add to that, we need to look seriously at our maintenance budget as well.
Right, exactly. Well, no, the last thing I wanted to just mention was, I said this at a meeting before, and some persons got a little bit upset when I said it. But there's no point waiting until February 25th, 2025 to start looking for the additional money that you will need to pay Meridian to finish the port. Because it will not be the case that in February 2025, when they run short of money, that you're gonna tell them leave and get somebody else to finish it. They're gonna have to finish it. So I'm just saying, not necessarily you, but to everybody who is thinking about this thing going into the future, we need to start right now assessing how much money it's going to need for the 13 months so far overrun of the project. I know there's contingencies. The contingencies will run out at some point, obviously, right? So we need to start looking for the additional funds to finish the port. And this thing about the contractor has liabilities and you're going to ask them to pay and take back money from them, that is wishful thinking. You're going to have to pay them to finish the port.
Point taken.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Mr.
Good evening,
Patterson.
sir.
Actually, I'm forced to follow up on what he just said, so I'll ask the question in a different way. But before I do, who's representing
Meridian?
The bank?
No, CDB are not usually part
Nobody
of
here to represent CDB?
No, they're not usually part of our town hall meetings.
And Meridian is not here?
And Meridian chose not to be
And
here.
who represents the government of Montserrat as far as the policy end of things?
Of course, well, you haven't seen policymakers here.
So there's
today.
a gap there. Earlier, somebody asked a question and she said, I don't think you'll be able to answer it, but it must be asked. So similarly, I'm going to do the same thing. As said before, the estimated cost for the project was about 90 million, correct? The estimated time for completion was 18 months. Correct me if I'm wrong. And then now we have an extra 13 months beyond the original date anticipated. That is 70% of the total amount of time estimated before, which clearly will be costly to someone. Somebody's going to have to pay. You said government of Montserrat pays as work is being done. That suggests that the difficulty in paying workers that Meridian has faced, if you've been paying them on time, is only a warning of what's coming. So Meridian may be already facing significant financial stress. I hope you can concur or not. Probably not. Is it that the government of Montserrat, CDB, and others are going to wait until Meridian collapses? Or are you going to get as much work done as possible, anticipating that they will collapse? Is that the way things are done with projects? I mean, you're hoping that they can find funds of their own, if necessary, to complete it. Maybe, it's unfair to ask you.
Right, so I understand your statement and your question, and you're directing your question to policy makers, and I think there's an appropriate place for asking that question, which you at times do have the opportunity to do so.
Forgive me, sir. I was trying to ease the stress off you know.
Yes. So obviously the question is not for me to answer.
Agreed. So
yes.
That is why you need to have all stakeholders to give a comprehensive answer to questions. We had the same problem when the volcano erupted. We had the authorities and the scientists. No, scientists facing the public, the authorities were not present. We ended up with a serious problem. Anyway, so let's go on to a very simple question, actually. I'm going to ask a question that I think every layman would ask. As I approached the mic and looked at the picture on the wall, the breakwater that Mr. West referred to, which is, that wall port. We're looking at a vessel that's longer than that. What happens when that vessel is docked on the inside? I know what will happen if it's on the outside, but if it's on the inside and there's heavy seas, real rough seas, will it be able to dock?
now that question is, the response is conditional on how heavy the seas are.
Therefore, with the protection you have, you are expecting downtime.
Yes.
In that downtime that was already estimated for the previous port.
Right. So it is designed to reduce our downtime by 50%.
By 50%?
By 50%. Yes. And I heard your news report recently, which was correct in that our port has been experiencing about 30% downtime. It was stated in the SDP, and when we were making reference to the port and funding for the port.
So wouldn't a complete protection have limited that other 50%?
A longer port would provide added protection. A longer port would require more funding be provided.
Significantly reduce the downtime.
Yes.
Correct? Yet, we were not prepared to provide investment to reduce that.
Who was not prepared to provide the investment?
Well, they're not here to answer.
All right.
Okay.
Oh, good.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right.
Good afternoon. As I sit there, I'm pretty much impressed with what I'm seeing. And the whole question of risk management comes into play in my mind. First of all, the port is situated in an open area, open sea area. And we are pretty much aware of the North
Seas. Yeah.
Seas. So the question is, for me, is the design, the caissons. Have they been utilized in a similar environment, perhaps in the Caribbean, in the same open environment?
Caisson's design is not a new type of design. In terms of it being used in the Caribbean, I don't have the stats as to whether, but it's not something new being used for construction of port in open waters, in rough seas. We see this design being used in Pacific, in the U.S. And obviously we mentioned the design criteria earlier. It takes into consideration storm surges over the last 75 years with a safety factor added to that. What is really different about the construction method that is being used, that they have been using smaller size caissons, but when you put them back together, it amounts to the same as having a large size caisson. Under conditions where equipment is available, road facilities are available, you would have a full-size caissons from top to bottom. Generally, that is how they're constructed. We had to look at how we can use the same concept and fit it within our portfolio.
Okay, so you're saying there's some level of experiment or compromise?
Not necessarily compromise, because the design numbers are there to show.
The numbers are there, but what I'm saying is that it's now been tested.
Yes, it's now being tested.
And if you can, and it's very difficult to find $100 million. It was. And it's going to be even greater if something happens, especially when we have high seas. I was looking at what you were speaking about, the whole question of risk again.
Right.
You're putting down the caissons, and you are basically stabilizing them with iron pegs in the sea. The question you should be able to answer is whether or not these are coated with whatever for the additional protection that's necessary. I think what I'm saying is, when I say you, the team should know, because that's critical, because we know what can happen if you have iron in a salty environment. And also, the whole question of what is required to keep it stable, for me, is of some concern. The other thing I want to speak about in terms of risk is, yes, we have used, what do you call it? Stebbits. Now we are utilizing stones. I believe that it's all packed and so on. But what is it that's really ensuring that it is locked? Because again, we don't have the money. If we have some rough seas and something happens, then it can actually interfere with the operations of the port. So I'm just saying that sometimes when you try to do things in a cheap way, you can pay down the road, and this is not really something that I think we should encourage in the first place. But last but not least, when you get my understanding of a final document of a project is that this is what we would actually provide at the end of the game. And that is how you arrive at your cost. So, and therefore timelines are important. What really transpired to move that window from by a year? What variations came into place? I mean, for me, what variations came into place?
All right. So I would give you a response, but it's a pity that the contractor is not here to respond to their schedule. Mm-hmm. But you would have heard the engineer mention a number of things that would have impacted schedule and would have caused delays. Delays with equipment, delays in completing the designs, and delays in finalizing the designs. There were sometimes you heard him mention about the operation of the concrete batch plant, which is very, very pertinent to the construction of the precasting of the casings. That came into operation when Andre, December of 2023, yes. Okay. That came into operation.
Okay, I do understand.
So there are various challenges, and of course this is an underwater construction, and we do expect to see challenges as we go ahead. Yes. To respond to your question with regard to the rock anchors, so these are not coated, similar to the steels the bars that are being used to construct the casings. The technology of coating bars has its own defect, where they have seen where at times if those bars get a scratch or damage, it allows water ingress, which at the end of the day defeat the whole purpose why you coat them in the first place. Under construction, it is inevitable that they're going to get scratched. They're being lifted, they're being tossed about, they're being placed. So as part of the design criteria to ensure that there is no water ingress, a cover, a thickness of minimum 3 inches is how the casings have been designed. Mm-hmm. The rock anchors are placed in the center of these casings. I think the wall is about an 8-inch thick, 6-inch thick, so the center of 3 inches. Also, these are covered with, I mentioned earlier, a grout, a specialized grout that covers these steel bars and protect them from water ingress.
Thank you.
Let me just help you out with the science, because I realize the corrosion issue is an issue for everybody. I have a biochemistry degree, so I can help you out quite quickly. In order for something to corrode, especially metal, you need an oxidative component, because it's an oxidative reaction. What you will find, and I'll just give a simple example. If you have 2 boats, one that ran ashore, one that sunk, you will find that the boat that ran ashore would rust a lot faster than the one that sunk. When you have the caissons and you have the steel, I guess, rebars or whatever you have for them, that you're also going to cement in the caissons.
Right.
you're removing a lot of the oxidative component from that steel. So it's not going to rust anywhere near as fast as if you had steel sitting down on the shore side. So it's just a simple chemistry. That's why you have boats like the Titanic that you can still go and see because they've sunk under the water and there's not a lot of oxygen that's there. So once you remove a lot of the oxidative component, you don't have to worry about the corrosion happening anywhere near as fast as it would, like, let's say, someplace in Lookout that sees the sea blast.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, just add there,
Yeah, go ahead.
It's a belts and braces design because you're depending on the weight of the caisson itself, which is a weighty structure, right? You're infilling it with aggregate, which is going to add weight, and then you also have the rock. You also have the rock anchor. So it's a combination of these elements that gives it its stability against the wave action.
All right, thank you, Justin.
Mr. Patterson, have you made the first payment, your royalty payments to Lego as yet? Lego.
No, we haven't.
Just a light moment.
I was late in understanding, but yes, I finally caught it.
Now, I noticed that you said you're using dynamic revetments for the
coastal protection.
The coastal protection. I looked it up, what it means, and I'm not going to go any further. But I'll just say that as a result of saving money by using dynamic revetments as opposed to stabits, you are now transporting those units of the dynamic revetment across the length and breadth of Montserrat on open back trucks with a little piece of chain across the back. Which engineer has said that coming down one of those hills, that chain is going to hold those huge rocks that you have in the back of the truck? That is going up, whatever. Coming up St. Peter's. It is an accident waiting to happen, and something needs to be done. We look at things in Montserrat, lots of times, it's Montserrat, nothing will happen. But when I see that every day, trucks going with huge boulders in the back of them with no protection at the back, that's a problem. That should be fixed. Okay.
Come and take on board. And I was not the engineer who approved that.
Drive time review that
just before, it sounds jovial, but it's a serious matter, and we have taken this up with the contractor. I think prior to the train, it was open, but it's something that we would continue to look into and see how the situation can improve. But there's a number of things you have to look at, because I like to look at things in a balanced way. Now, if the stones are transported with the backing on, you will not be able to get the stones out when they raise the dam.
Carry less, but you're saving money, so you fill it up.
Well, even with less, what you'll find, and some truck operators here may understand what I'm saying, that I think that is why they prefer, unless you're going to have an equipment too, and someone there to always be taking it off and put it on. It provides some difficulty. It means that our guys have to invest in some equipment that has quick release and that sort of stuff. But safety is important, and for me, it is paramount.
Mr. Patterson, I must compliment you. We've been battering you for months now on this board, and you've done very well, seriously, doing some public relations. And probably the alliance might. But my question,
but before you ask,
yeah. But I'm serious, though. You've done.
I appreciate this sentiment, but it's not only myself. I do have a very talented team with me, a very supportive team that makes the mill run. Mr. Foster,
definitely. You guys have done
Dr. Burns. We have Mrs. Chalmers, and we have Mr. Daly.
So one simple question. We know it's a design and build. is the design final?
The design has been approved by the physical planning authorities.
Okay.
Just my concluding remarks. And I want to support what. No, you can hear me. I want to agree with Julian. Thanks for endorsing the United Alliance.
But before you go further, sir, please note that this is a town hall meeting for
No. I'm just saying I agree with him and thing. But one, and this is a suggestion. We're looking at cruise ships coming in. We have to look at the economy.
Right.
Do you have water supply lines in the design?
Yes.
Do you have any upland tanks in the design?
No.
Okay, because we may need to have upland tanks just on the terracing that you cut, so that when you're filling a vessel, you don't impact on the supply.
Supply, yes.
In the north of the island.
A matter of fact, the Water Authority has highlighted this, even with as a potential issue with the construction of the port, which can, concrete construction can draw a lot of water. So I know there is some thing being looked at in terms of expanding capacity within the northern side, which can go towards this. But I take the suggestion on board.
Anything in relation to fuel? Do you have fuel lines on?
No. That was raised, but based on the advice provided and discussion with the port. And that is a port authority matter. I think there's a preference to keep the fuel supply separate from the current, from the operation with passengers and cargo, given the risk that may involve. That's just my layman.
No, because your lines will be empty when your cruise ships are there. And if, in fact, a cruise ship or yacht comes in and wants to resupply from Montserrat, then that is when you put the fuel in. And most times you would then put the fuel in when the passengers are on shore. So that, I think, is taking away a bit of the economy, because in fact we can supply. Plus we can supply yachts coming in here, including mega yachts, because they're looking for safe places where they can go to resupply. Okay, just a comment on that. What is the height that you're looking at for swells under which you can operate a vessel reasonably well on the inside?
I don't have the information on hand, but there's a table that depicts the operational tolerance for ships within sea conditions.
Okay, because
so that has taken into consideration. I think on the inside, I think is a tolerance of 2 feet.
No, have to be meters.
I can't remember. Could be 2 meters. But I can look up the information.
Okay, and the
other
other one, which is a little disingenuous, is that you show the big ship docking on the inside, and you put it down to look at what has already happened, because you've started putting down caissons. But if you look at the sea, you realize it was an extremely calm day. So your caissons really didn't do much in terms of protecting that big ship docking on the outside. But that's beside the point.
Well, if you know my statement was that while construction is ongoing, we're still able to operate the port under
we're not going to argue on that.
Normal conditions.
We're not going to argue about that. But thanks very much for having us. I think you and the rest of the team have done a wonderful job in your presentations.
Thank you.
However, it is very, very unfortunate that the governor is not here to answer the questions, since she's the minister with responsibility for this project. No, frankly speaking, because and I say that against the backdrop that when the question was asked of Meridian, Meridian spoke only of the governor. She never mentioned a minister nor anyone else from government. So, which is why I'm saying I'm so sorry that she's not here to deal with the policy questions. But when we're having meetings of this nature, I think it is important for the minister with responsibility for the project to be here. And just one little message I want to give you to deliver, since you're representing government.
It's been broadcast live.
Yeah,
so.
yeah, but I want to give you a message,
okay.
Since you're representing government. Thanks for doing everything that you're doing in order to facilitate everything here. But it is critically important, and I just want to reiterate it, that a government representative should be here, you know, just to answer some of the other issues, and also the issue which I wanted to bring to your attention, which you can pass on, remind the Premier that when the financial secretary signs on behalf of government, it is like him signing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I know we just about time, but we allow for the final two questions.
No, somebody called me to ask you a question. The Port Development Committee, who is on it? That's what the person asked. Somebody's watching it.
So the Port Development Committee was a committee that was in place prior to the award of the contract. So there's not currently a committee in place. Yes.
I note that you've cut back the hill out there. How does that affect the stability of the hill, given that we definitely will have more intense rainfall, heavier rainfalls for longer periods, and it's a prone area to earthquakes? How is that stability of the hill affected by the cutting back of that?
Thank you for your question. Justin, you want to come in here?
Well, yes, the hill or the cliff face was studied by one of our expert geologists, and a methodology and system of shaping the hill and securing it was done, taking into consideration the fact that the profile would change and of course the potential for seismic activity. This was passed on to which was included in the design criteria documents, which the contractor would have looked at in terms of doing the final designs. Those designs were done and reviewed and approved by Stantec. What I can do for you is I can touch base with that subject matter expert and get a simplified description of what has been done, and the measures that the works can withstand, with regards to slope stability and seismic.
So Justin, let me ask one quick question then about the aesthetics of the thing. It looks like an open mine. What are the plans to make it look halfway attractive?
Right. So to answer your question quickly, as part of their bids and slope stability, vegetation was mentioned as part of that. So I'm hoping that you would see some vegetation being propagated along that way. But we're in the tropics. I remember we would have cut Runaway Gut a few years back, and nobody could remember Runaway Gut was cut and looked something like that. But we're in the tropics. It allows for natural growth. Never mind that we're in the north. That is taken into consideration. But they do have some greening in mind. And just to add to Justin's response, cutting the slope is part of stabilizing the slopes. Prior to the cuttings, we had fallouts that somewhat endangered the life of port workers and fisher folks. And this was highlighted from the get-go as part of the project. So you see it's been cut in a it's not been shown, in a step formation that is part of the stability. You reduce the overburden, as well as it allows it to accumulate any fallouts and so on, that it doesn't reach to the bottom to endanger folks. Thank you.
So I just wanted to take into consideration the people online. I'm not sure what point they entered the chat, but there is a question again about the minister, so I'll just ask it so you can answer it live. Is any minister of government available at this meeting to address the policy issues arising? This matter has now moved beyond technical issues, clearly beyond the scope of Mr. Bass.
Oh, thank you, and I think Mr. Mead somewhat responded to that.
Okay, the last question is, what is the estimated additional cost of the project now that completion has been further delayed to February 2025, and who pays for this?
Right, so we don't have that information at the moment in terms of costs, and in terms of who pays the contractor. The contract speaks to how that is operated. Yeah?
So one question from myself. What strategies are in place to ensure that the project has enough skilled labor, especially if there's a risk of employee dissatisfaction or turnover?
Repeat that question, sorry?
What are the strategies in place to ensure that the project has enough skilled labor, especially if there's a risk of employee dissatisfaction or turnover?
The contractor is not here to respond to that. But one thing we know for sure, that they have been importing skilled labor to supplement our local labor force, to ensure that we have production going on. In terms of risk and dissatisfaction of workers and laborers, they do have a health and safety specialist, and also the social and gender safeguard specialist in the person of Dr. Barnes. I'm hoping if there is such, it would be addressed through those lines. There is also the Labor Department, and I know the Labor Department has been into talk with the labor force on different elements as well.
So just a final question. What are the checks and balances that are in place for a contractor like Meridian, and who are they accountable to? For example, as part of their contract, were they required to attend meetings like these? Because it's not enough to say that they just didn't turn up.
No, it's not part of their contract to attend meetings like these, but at least you would hope with your responsibility to the people of Montserrat that, and they have been attending meetings. This is the only one they haven't attended, but I'm not providing an excuse for them. For us, as I mentioned at the beginning, community progress is our purpose, and we take that at heart. Whether the questions are difficult or whether they're easy, I think we do have a responsibility to the people of Montserrat to provide a response to questions asked.
And then last but not least, there were some questions that were raised throughout the conversation that you weren't able to answer. Who can they direct an email to or contact to get answers to those questions?
Right, so questions can be further directed to me, and I can direct them to the necessary persons. What we usually do, we also go back to the recordings for our meetings. We take the questions asked or the frequent questions asked, and we sometimes would provide a response either at the next town hall meeting. We may put out a bulletin on the ministry's Facebook page. But my email address is Patterson, that is Patterson, R for Ralston at gov.ms, giving out my personal information. Yes. Again, just before we close, I want to encourage us, and I take this very seriously. Our team take this very seriously. I want to remind us that we must be able to position ourselves to benefit from this project at the end of the day. We shouldn't sit and say, well, it's another white elephant or so on. We, as a people of Montserrat, we have to position ourselves to benefit from the project. There was another comment online, and this one is for Doc, she's not here. We did mention that one school was allowed the opportunity to be part of an engagement, and it was indicated that we should go allow the other schools, and we take that suggestion on board. We have been into the community college, but there are other primary schools, I think the point is, and the Montserrat Secondary School.
Yes, Mr. Patterson, in your role as a member of the project management unit, I want to say to us, to all of us, to beware of the lowest bidder. We understand what we are already facing now with this project. There's a project that is soon to be tendered. Beware of the lowest bidder. Because you're
soon to be tendered has been tendered?
Not tendered, has been tendered. The evaluation, I suppose, has been ongoing because the tender closed months ago. So I would imagine that there's some kind of evaluation going on. And I suspect, because it's not completed yet, that there is some issue. Intuition tells me that, common sense tells me that there's already something afoot. So all I'm saying to all of us, beware of the lowest bidder.
Okay. Thank you. And I just want to, as far as the head of the project management team, or the Montserrat Port Development Project team, I want to express our appreciation for those who came out tonight and those who have been coming out during the last 6 and 7 meeting and making this a worthwhile initiative. I don't take it lightly. We don't take it lightly. And again, we would always encourage folks to come out and express your opinion, and as we can make a valid contribution to the development of Montserrat. Thank you. Glenroy is indicating, just as on your way out, we do have a demonstration of how the caissons are aligned from the base unit right up to the final units. And I know Mr. West asked about our copyrights with Lego, but it's a good demonstration. It gives you a very good appreciation of what we are constructing. Thank you, Ms. Bass.
So as we conclude, I want to express our sincere thanks. First, thank you to Mr. Trevor Howell for starting our meeting with a thoughtful prayer. A big thank you to Mr. Ralston Patterson and Mr. Justin Jennings-Ray for their detailed project updates, and also Mr. Robert Biner and Ms. Monique Forbes for taking any questions or sharing their expertise. To all the attendees, both in person and online, your participation in the discussion was invaluable. Your input will hopefully help to shape the success of the Montserrat Port Development Project. Finally, thanks to everyone who helped to organize this event. We look forward to continuing this journey together. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great evening.